Yo, what's poppin' everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Zach Lesage here. Today we're going to be covering over the top 10 best decks in format. That being said, there's both Dortmund and Joinville regionals happening in Europe and South America, so that's going to directly lead this video into that metagame. So if you're preparing for those events, this video might be helpful to see where the top decks are now. A lot of the information gathered is from online Play Limitless events and the Trainer Hill website. Beyond that, we're going to see exactly how it goes. If you want to put your best guess in the comments below, let us know what your top 10 best decks are, in which order, and see if you're right. Let's jump into the video. Jumping into our number 10 pick, it's going to be Roaring Moon EX, the deck that came second at Worlds. Changed only a couple cards when it comes to this list, and reasonably, this deck, we got to start off somewhere. We have seen this deck seen some success at online tournaments, but maybe it's not seeing as much success as other decks that'd be number one. This list is based off of the results from Play Limitless tournaments with 50 or more players from September 16th, basically when the set came out on PTCG Live, and was available for Play Limitless tournaments for tracking purposes, all the way up until current, which is more or less the late nights that we just had in this past week. That being said, Roaring Moon EX is all about accelerating energies. It's all about being in a turbo aggressive deck. That's going to get you somewhere most of the time, maybe not all of the time. So in this particular metagame, it's fine. And I think there's a lot of decks that are within the top 15 or so that are more than viable to be playing at a tournament such as Dortmund or Joinville. So even if it's low on this list like this deck, or even if it's not on this list like Lugia V-Star, which is currently at number 11, there's a handful of other decks like Palkia V-Star that also didn't make this list. Those decks are also viable in their own way. We'll have to see as the metagame continues to grow. Next week's going to be a big jump because we're actually going to have physical major tournaments from outside of Japan that we can kind of focus on to really grow this metagame. If you need any of the cards for this deck or any of the other decks featured in this video, check out our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards and PTCGL Store. We have our links available to those in the description. Also, be sure to check out the pinned comments of this video if you want to copy and paste these decks right into PTCG Live. We got you. Check out the pinned comment. It probably takes about 24 hours for us to post it, but it will be there at some point. Let's jump into our number 9 pick. Another deck that did well at Worlds, we have Iron Thorns EX, actually the deck that won Worlds. Blocking abilities is certainly going to be great in almost any given format, and Thorns is quite a good pick if you avoid the wrong matchups, right? So if you have a deck that beats Thorns, you just beat Thorns. If you have a deck that Thorns beats, most of the time Thorns just beats that deck. I think Thorns is a really great call for anyone who's going into a blind metagame, maybe unsure of what they're going to play, because sometimes the inherent strength of this deck alone can carry you all the way to a solid finish. So let's say if you are going to Dortmund or Joinville, don't know what to play at all, and you're like, hey, everything else feels bad, maybe go with Iron Thorns because you have a chance to get there. Nothing really changed from the World Championship list. That's something that I might look into a little bit in the future, but until then, I'm just going to go with the copy and paste. We saw this deck win Worlds. It was good enough to win the best placement of the tournament of the entire season. It's probably going to be good enough for this list in the top 10 best decks. Let's see what we got going on at number 8. Jumping into our number 8 deck is going to be Terapagos EX. Now, Terapagos EX is a deck that's been kind of hard to track online because there's versions that call it Terapagos Dusknoir, and there's versions that call it Terapagos Pidgeot. This one's called Terapagos Pidgeot on Play Limitless, even though there is more of a Dusknoir line when we look at it. List credit goes to Josh Frink, who won a large 300 player tournament, fellow TSS teammate. So shout out Josh. Really the goal of this deck is to get out a whole big bench attack with Terapagos every single turn, but you could use Noctowl to search things out, Fan Rotom to make the deck more consistent, Pidgeot to search things out, and of course use Dusknoir to pop things off when you want to. I think this is really the big new deck out of this set. We've seen a handful of different things see success, but right now Terapagos seems like it could be the deck to beat. I know it's placed at number 8, a little bit low, but that's where it has been ranked based off of the past couple weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this deck kind of shoot up with players playing it at Dortmund and Joinville. There have been other builds of Terapagos. We've covered a tanky build on the channel. I know Josh streamed this version of his tournament run at the channel. I think what we'll do is cover this version on Monday in a deck profile video to kind of go over it. It's a really great deck, so if you haven't picked up those Terapagos, hit up our friends at Kayfabe Cards. let's jump into number 7. At number 7, we have the updated version of Miraidon EX. Area 0, really in this deck to give yourself that big turn of having a bunch of bench Pokemon. Whether that means you get the Fezandipiti, Squawkabilly, Mew, whatever, it does allow Raikou V to hit for a lot more damage than it previously ever could. So it gives us a lot of opportunities to see this deck just doing well in general, being an aggressive 2 prize card deck, having an option for that huge bench, and not really being hurt for space and in the process. So a lot of really cool things that you can do with a deck like this. This deck has been performing well online, and it's one of those things where it seems decently positioned, might lose to Charizard, but can hold its own against most other decks. I think Miraidon EX is really one of those decks to watch. We saw how Jesse Parker went on that very strong run throughout the entire season with Miraidon. Maybe this is a deck to watch out for. That's my gut feeling when it comes down to it. At number 6, we have Snorlax Control. Now, Snorlax with the Cornerstone, Ogerpon, and Mimikyu, 2 cards that we've seen in other control decks over and over again. We're able to stop our opponent from retreating, stop our opponent from attacking us, and of course, we're going to have cards like Handheld Fan, Eerie, and Misfortune Sisters to disrupt our opponents. With most of the decks on this list being relatively discovered already, decks previously from the Twilight Masquerade and Shrouded Fable format, we do have a pretty good idea on how to kind of counter the metagame earlier than we probably would before, because Stellar Crown has almost added less cards to the format than Shrouded Fable has. A lot of it being a filler set, where Shrouded Fable did add all the Dust Noirs, the Night Stretchers, etc., etc. So really, both sets do kind of function as their own mini set. Snorlax can take advantage of that and be like, hey, nothing really got added too much. We can kind of counter things. So we'll have to see exactly how that goes. We're nearly halfway through this list, and we're at last format's best deck in format, Regidrago V-Star. This is a deck that I played to Worlds. We saw a lot of strong players, such as Ian Robb, play it to Baltimore Regionals, and this is the way that I'd be playing the deck right now. We have Regidrago being able to copy your Dragon Pokemon out of your discard pile. Seems like a pretty well-built, consistent list across the board, and we're just trying to overwhelm our opponent with the options that we have. We've seen some players cut out Hisuian Goodra. We've seen some players add in Haxorus. We'll have to see what works out to be the best kind of tech for the upcoming metagame. But right now, if I were to be going into a tournament tomorrow with Regidrago, this would default be my list. In best of 3, you might be able to cut a Dragapult EX for a copy of, let's say, Canceling Cologne, or a copy of Temple of Sinnoh. I think both are great choices, so we'll have to see exactly how things go right now. But right now, Regidrago at number 5, and I want to see how this deck might see success at upcoming tournaments like Dortmund and Joinville. While Gardevoir hasn't really changed too much in the metagame, its metagame positioning has gotten a little bit better, and in terms of a lot of the decks that were previously seeing success, such as Regidrago, that might have been holding it back a little bit, Gardevoir seems a little bit more well-positioned, regardless of not receiving any new cards in Stellar Crown. Mainly, we're going to be focusing on just getting Gardevoir set up, using Curly to discard energies, and powering up our single prize card Pokemon that can help us take advantage of any situation. I do think maybe a second Technical Machine de-evolution could be good in this deck, but it's one of those things where it's right now I'm happy with the way that the list is working. I'm happy with the way the list is looking across the board. So sometimes it just all fits. We'll wait and see what some of the top players are going to be playing at both Joinville and Dortmund to make any final adjustments to Gardevoir in this format. We're getting up to our top 3 decks, and in this case, we have Dragapult EX. Dragapult EX getting a few new cards, such as Crispin, Briar, and Sparkling Crystal, really allowing this deck to see success towards the top of the metagame. Now, in this case, Dragapult seems to be able to snipe off Pokemon that we might see on the bench, such as those Routes, those Charmanders, etc., etc. Give this deck a fully strong matchup in this field. Is Dragapult going to be really played at any of these upcoming majors? That's really the thing. It's more of like Dragapult was almost there as a super competitive deck. We've seen it with some Charizard builds. We've seen it as a 1-1-1 tech. I think Tor's experimented with it a few times. But is Dragapult a full-fledged deck now with Sparkling Crystal, Crispin, and Briar. Is it better to play this version? Is it better to play Xatu? There's a bunch of questions we're still asking, and that means that things are thrown up in the air. We're really going to wait to see where Dortmund and Joinville are at to see if anything has really been changed from this archetype. Jumping into our number 2 pick, we have Charizard EX. Now, I do want to make a quick pause here. For anyone who said that Zach always just default puts Charizard as number 1, y'all are full of it. As much as I am a Zard fan, it's one of those things where we've seen Regidrago as the number 1 deck. We've seen Gardevoir as the number 1 deck. I'm only here to provide information for our community. That being said, I do like this version of Charizard. We have Cleffa for the extra consistency. We have Thornton to kind of maneuver through our Pokemon. And of course, we have that Hisuian Heavy Ball if we have any of our key pieces prized, like my Rotom that happens to always be prized. I think Charizard is my favorite deck from this format, but it's not the number 1 deck. There can only be one number 1 deck, and what is it going to be? If you haven't put your best guess in the comments below, let us know. But until then, let's jump into it. Let's see what we got going on at our number 1 choice heading into Dortmund and Joinville. Here you have it. Raging Bolt EX is our number 1 deck heading into the weekend. It's one of those things where Raging Bolt, it might not always have the best matchup spread, but it's very consistent at hitting turn 1 going second, Professor Sada knockout with Bellowing Thunder. And Briar plus Teal Mask Ogerpon EX has really allowed this deck to see different elements of play, allowing you to maybe steal games that you otherwise couldn't have. I think there's a lot of different ways that you might want to play this deck. I've seen some builds that focus on Area 0. I've seen some builds that don't play Briar. This to me is probably the most consistent you can get the deck with keeping cool techs like Briar in the deck. I've been playing this deck online a lot. It's been doing incredibly well for me, and maybe we'll see it do incredibly well at regionals as well. One of those things, is Raging Bolt the best deck? Let me know what you think. Otherwise, let me close things out. That's what we got going on with our top 10 best decks of this week. Got some closing thoughts for y'all. I think new metagames are always interesting. And I mean, this is really going to be our first weekend where we're going to be seeing the new deck see success. It puts a lot of weight on that weekend, but there's a lot of top players that are going to be playing at both Joinville and Dortmund regionals. I mean, I'm really excited to see what Tord's going to be bringing, Stefan Ivanov, Fabian Pujo. Like, I could go on and on and on and on about these players in Europe, players in South America. I really want, as a competitive player, see what's going to be going on. I'm going to be traveling to Lima the following week, so this weekend's really going to set the metagame for Lima, for anyone who's going to Louisville, anyone that's playing in cups, challenges. So my video might be accurate. Maybe it's going to change up and Terapagos is going to spike. There's only so much that I can do to control that, and it's really going to depend on what the top players bring to these events. Be prepared for anything to happen, and let me know what you think is going to happen in the comments below. Got a lot of great content coming up this week, but if there's anything that you want to watch, let us know in the comments. Also, if you're looking up your game, hit me up for some coaching. I offer coaching at metafy.gg/@ZachLesage. It's available in the description, so if you want to improve your gameplay, I got you. That being said, I'll catch up with all you later. Peace out and have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.